The time is at hand.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
One of the many spirits said to haunt the area.
Unknown animal attack.
We need a great reset.
Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen.
Coming to you on location from the city between the lakes. You're in dark places. Yeah, I'm doing a episode entirely on location this week. I mentioned last week that I've been doing a lot of traveling for work and working at a different store and everything, so I've not had much time to do the show now. So here I sit in the parking lot recording this week's episode. So I'll apologize in advance for any kind of honking horns and weird distractions and gang gunfire and stuff like that in the background. Something kind of weird happened on my way here on May the 5th. Maybe all of you car junkies out there can help me. I've got a long drive. I keep my cruise control set. Speed limit's 55, but I've got it set to like 64. Cheating the system a little. So I was like 20 minutes into my little trip. There's a guy in front of me in the right lane, and he's going like 60. I got my cruise control set at 64, so I go around him. I'm passing him. I get right beside of the guy as I'm passing him, and my Jeep, just like someone slammed on the brakes or something. And it was weird, just a split second. Right while I was passing the guy, right beside of him. I looked down at my gauges trying to figure out what's going on, and all of my gauges are down to like zero. Like somebody had just shut the Jeep off. Pretty crazy. And then just in a split second, it's back to normal. I'm going 64 miles an hour. I passed the guy and I didn't have any more trouble on the rest of the way here. Kind of weird. I don't know what that would have been. Some kind of mechanical thing with my car. But my money is on aliens. That's what I'm thinking. There was a UFO over top of me. Shut my car off there for a second. That's it. And here's someone else who's on location this week. I'm pretty sure he's in a parking lot too. Mr. Haunted.
This story was sent in to us by our news correspondent, Paul Chadwick. So Paul, thanks for the story. This is Mr. Haunted with breaking news. The Exorcist star dies. Ron Faber has died. Dead, dead, dead. The Obie Award-winning stage actor, who is best known for a brief but vital role in The Exorcist, passed away from lung cancer at the age of 90 on March 26th. Although he died a month ago, Ron's death has only just been announced, and his friend and colleague David Kelly remembered him on Facebook as a great artist and gentleman with a wonderful voice and laugh. Ron had won an Obie Award for his 1972 performance in And They Put Handcuffs on Flowers, an off-Broadway show, when he was spotted by director William Friedkin and offered the role of Chuck in the 1973 horror classic. Chuck is the assistant director of Crash Course, the movie within a movie in which Chris McNeil, Ellen Burstyn, stars, and he is most memorably has a scene where he informs the actress that the film's director, Burke Dennings, has been found dead. Dead, dead. In addition, Ron also added some of the deeper guttural vocal sounds that were layered into Mercedes McCambridge's recordings as the voice of the demon in order to suggest that there were more than one presence inside Reagan. The actor previously admitted he was annoyed that this contribution to the movie went unknown, You ruined everything. He told Coming Soon in 2016, Friedkin told me that there were 3 people doing the voice of the demon for the film. He was determined to make sure that the devil did not sound just like one person. He wanted it to sound like a legion of voices. So, he had Mercedes McCambridge do the core part of the voice of the demon, and myself and someone else, and I never got any credit for it. That was my shock when I saw the movie. Mercedes McCambridge got the sole credit on the end. So that really irritated me. There were things from that recording that I was certain made it onto the final film, and these were mostly sounds that I made, deep guttural moaning and groaning. The sound design people on the film played with the voices, mine included, and did the overlapping and so forth. Mercedes was the person responsible for all the wheezing. She was a well-known asthmatic. Ron's other credits include Kojak, The Edge of Night, Law and Order, and Third Watch. And there you have it. Breaking news. Back to In Dark Places.
Hey, thanks, Jimmy. And now here is the Nicolas Cage meltdown of the week.
You know who I am?
What? You're nothing to me.
Hey! You know me? Huh? 19 years ago, I threw you from a car and stole your boss's money. You remember that?
In the mask. Chema thought I took the money. He tortured me for 2 days. I lost these fingers because of you. Ishna.
Someone put a bullet in my daughter's head with a Russian handgun. Who did it? Huh? What was it, shirt off? Huh? Someone after had a turn? Who was it? Who did it? Who did it? No, don't die. Don't die.
Our friend Chris Bledsoe down in South Carolina recently put out a book called UFO of God. And he's always came of the school of thought that UFOs are angelic. And I've heard a lot of people say that it's like the other way around, that they're actually demonic. I'm not so sure what I think anymore. I don't know. I used to be kind of neutral and say that I didn't know if the UFOs were angels or demons. I just knew they were real. But I'm kind of leaning more toward the demonic thing myself now. But this week on the show, demonic UFOs. What is the purpose behind the UFO phenomenon? Some people are convinced that UFOs are essentially evil, that they may actually be emissaries of the devil. Hillary Evans investigates this bizarre notion. UFOs are here to possess your soul. Headlines such as this from the American magazine Official UFO are generally dismissed as coming from the lunatic fringe of ufology. The theory that UFOs are controlled by demonic forces seeking to delude or destroy mankind is often derided as just another crackpot suggestion, to be taken no more seriously than the idea that there is a UFO base near the Welsh coast. But by no means. All those who support the theory of the demonic origin of UFOs are eccentrics. Among the nonsense are a number of realistic ideas that may point to a viable interpretation of the UFO mystery. What is it that makes a ufologist turn to theories of this sort? Is it merely that nothing else seems to fit, or is there solid evidence that really seems to point in that direction? Some commentators have suspected the former. In their book, Flying Saucers Are Hostile, from 1967, Brad Steiger and Joan Rattenor observed certain saucer cultists who have been expecting space brethren to bring along some pie in the sky continue to deliver saucer-inspired sermons on the theme that the saucers come to bring starry salvation to a troubled world. The self-appointed ministers who preach this extraordinary brand of evangelism ignore the fact that not all saucers can be considered friendly. Many give evidence of hostile actions. There is a wealth of well-documented evidence that UFOs have been responsible for murders, assaults, burning with direct ray focus, radiation sickness, kidnappings, pursuits of automobiles, attacks on homes, disruption of power sources, paralysis, mysterious cremations, and destructions of aircraft. Dozens of reputable eyewitnesses claim to have seen alien personnel loading their space vehicles with specimens from Earth, including animals, soil and rocks, water, and struggling human beings. Commenting in True's new report on this horrifying catalog, science fiction author Frederick Pohl reposted, "It's as false can be. There not only is not a wealth of such evidence, there isn't any. The absolute best you can say in support of that claim is that there are many people who think such things happen, and a mass of circumstantial bits and pieces of events. There is no evidence at all for the assumption that the saucers are almost certainly hostile." It is perhaps significant that even Steiger himself seems to have backed down from his former position. Flying Saucers Are Hostile was just one of the books he wrote in the 1960s. Others were entitled Flying Saucer Invasion, Target Earth, and The Flying Saucer Menace. But his Gods of Aquarius of 1976 is subtitled UFOs and the Transformation of Man, and expresses the beliefs that the UFO will serve as the spiritual midwife that will bring about mankind's star birth into the universe. Cynics might suggest that Steiger, is it Steger or Steiger? I think I've said it both ways. I think Steiger. Steger. Brad Steger. Yeah, we'll go with that. Cynics might suggest that Steger, having milked the UFO scare theme for all it could give, decided that the positive approach was more profitable, or perhaps he genuinely changed his mind. However, there is no lack of continuing support for demonic theory, but the crude business of rape and murder is not for the new demonists. What they fear is a more subtle takeover aimed at men's minds, or, for those whose beliefs include such a thing, their souls. In the Baptist Church at Warminster on January 28, 1979, Arthur Edel, physicist and astronomer, delivered a public address in which he told of his own personal encounters with demonic UFOs. In the summer of 1967, I was out watching for UFOs with a teenager by the name of Philip. As we waited in the dark, we became conscious that something was hovering silently overhead and quite near. I began to feel cold, more cold than seemed appropriate for the time of year. But Philip reacted badly to this thing, which, incidentally, we were only just able to make out. So low was its luminescence. He started to shake uncontrollably, and I realized that he was in some kind of danger. I bundled him into my car and took him home. We sat by the kitchen boiler and tried to warm up, but Philip could not recover from the shakes. The effect was no longer due to the cold, but to some induced effect from the UFO. I said, "Philip, do you believe in God?" "I don't know," he answered. "I have never given it any thought." I laid my hands upon his head and said, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I commanded this influence to leave Philip at once. The result was quite dramatic. Philip explained that a cold sensation traveled upward through his body and went out through his hands and away. Within a few seconds, all the shaking had stopped. Feeling a lot better, he looked at me and said that he now believed in God and the devil. A short time later, Philip contracted the shakes all over again. I sensed that he was possessed of an evil spirit. Commanding this spirit to manifest itself, an old cracked voice spoke through Philip's mouth, saying that his name was Satan. I commanded it to leave in the name of the Lord Jesus, and it did so. Evidently for Arthur Edel, the devil is very much a living entity. Further confirmation came from another UFO-related incident in the course of which he had a dramatic encounter with 3 fallen angels. They told him of their plan to take away men's minds and reduce them to a zombie-like state. Identifying themselves as coming from the planet Martaris, they said they aimed to bring peace to the world by eliminating man's destructive urges, which involved removing his soul entirely. But this, Edel claims, is a pack of lies. They lie about their origin, saying they are from outer space. They lie about their purpose, saying they have come to help mankind. And they lie about their identity, saying they are extraterrestrials. In fact, Edel insists they are fallen angels, based here on Earth, where they are preparing for a final takeover that has been prophesied throughout history and is now imminent. It continues. The present UFO activity points to the fact that these prophecies are on the point of fulfillment. People are already being brainwashed, and those many humans who are possessed of evil spirits have been prepared for the day of their coming. And it is clear that some of them are here already. The basic purpose behind all UFO phenomena today is to prepare for the coming of the Antichrist and the setting up of the world domination under the devil. This is all very well, but before people can be brought to appreciate the mortal danger they are in, they must first be convinced that devils themselves are reality. For most of us today, devils no longer form part of our system of belief. Evil is seen as resulting from distorted impulses in people's minds rather than from some tangible external source. So the first concern of believers like Arthur Edel is to reawaken the public to the fact that the devil is real. In a privately printed booklet entitled Who Pilots the Flying Saucers?, Gordon Cove insisted that by refusing to believe in devils, people are laying themselves open to attack. In 1954, when the booklet was published, the majority of ufologists were inclined to interpret UFOs as physically real spacecraft, piloted by aliens from elsewhere in the universe. Cove goes along with this view, but gives it his own interpretation. What we are suggesting is the possibility that Satan has seized one of the planets as his base of operations to attack the Earth. This thought may seem fantastic, but upon cool meditation, does it seem so absurd? The first thing a military general seeks when war is declared is a convenient headquarters. Satan is the cleverest military genius ever known. Is it feasible that Satan, along with his principalities and powers, his wicked angels and demons, would continue to float airily around in the atmosphere for thousands of years, when there are literally millions of planets which will be well adapted for a headquarters? Satan is partially powerless unless he can get some willing instruments to work through. Therefore, if Satan wanted to manufacture some flying saucers in order to facilitate the flight of his evil hosts throughout the vast universe, it would also be to his great advantage to get a race of beings under his control who would manufacture them for him. Could he not inspire the Venusians, if such exist, with supernatural cunning and wisdom to make a fleet of flying saucers, and also show them how to pilot these supernatural machines? So Cove concludes the beings that have contacted people with terrible warnings may have been demon-possessed Venusians or Martians, whose seeming benevolence was a sham designed to deceive. However, he does not rule out altogether the possibility that some of the UFOs may be piloted by benevolent beings. The striking increase in UFO activity in recent years, he argues, must surely indicate that a full-scale attack by the satanic forces is imminent, and the forces of good must be aware of this. So some, at least, of the flying saucers may contain angels sent by God to report on the state of the earth. The question arises, what are the angels reporting to God after their tour of inspection? They cannot have failed to observe the awful tide of corruption and sin that is fast engulfing both the USA and Great Britain. Our sins rise up to the heavens like giant mountain peaks and literally scream to God to pour out his vials of wrath upon us. However, we may draw some comfort from the fact that he quotes a prophet named Her, to whom it is revealed as long ago as 1903 that a third of World War may wipe out our civilization, and that an older race on Venus is taking measures to reestablish a new and better order in the shortest possible time. When the atomic bombs fall, these extraterrestrial aeroforms may be used to salvage what is good in our civilization, either persons or things. And when is all this to happen? Her's target date for the start of the Third World War was 1960, and peace was to be reestablished after 5 years of chaos and total anarchy in 1965. However, even though we managed to escape that particular calamity, it doesn't do to be complacent. There are plenty more prophets with plenty more warnings of doom. Bob Geyer of the Church of Jesus the Saucerine in Los Angeles told the writer Eric Norman in 1970, "Our conversations on the religious aspects of UFOs brought forth the conclusion that they herald the second coming of Christ." But whereas Gordon Cove asserts that the UFOs are piloted by devils masquerading as alien visitors from space, Geyer takes an opposite view. For him, the UFO pilots really are extraterrestrials. It is we here on Earth who have labeled them as devils, not realizing that Satan himself is an alien who has persuaded other aliens to join him. This guy's all kinds of fun. He said, "Satan, the old prince of darkness, and his legions of demons are also beings from other worlds. They came down from another planet. Once Satan was a member of God's astronauts. He became too greedy and too ambitious. He may have exploited the inhabitants of Earth or other planets. He may have tricked people into slavery. The interpretations may vary, but the demonists are agreed on the main issues. Whatever the UFOs may be, they represent a menace to us on Earth, and the scale of their activity shows that menace to be imminent. But just what danger is it that they threaten?" This episode of In Dark Places is sponsored in part by Paracon 3, Connecticut's original paranormal convention, May 13th through 14th, 2023. You can buy tickets now at paracon.wordpress.com. Doors open 11 a.m. daily, 10 a.m. for VIP admission. Advance tickets only $19.99. Now on sale. For more information, call 203-795-4737. Featuring special guests of horror, speakers, seminars, activities, entertainment, and attractions. Plus 80 vendors. With Brian J. Cano, Sean Austin, Sam Baltrusis, Carl Johnson, and Mr. Haunted. Paracon 3, May 13th through 14th at the Ansonia, Connecticut Armory. Ufologists have noted close parallels between the devils that, in the medieval period, were believed to be real and modern UFOs. But, asks Hillary Evans, does this really mean that UFOs are essentially evil? Thanks, Hillary. On March 18th, 1978, Bill Herman, a 30-year-old truck driver of Charleston, South Carolina, was watching a slick metal object about 60 feet in diameter as it maneuvered in the sky near his home. Abruptly, it dropped toward him. Suddenly, it was right in front of me. I fell backward. The next thing I knew was there was light all around me, green and blue, and I felt myself being tugged upward. In what seemed to him only a moment, Herman found himself sitting miles away in an open field in a diminishing circle of orange light as the spacecraft skittered away in a triangular flat pattern that, he was told later, was designed to avoid damage from Earth radar sources. I couldn't remember anything. I didn't know where I was. A terrible fear came over me, and I stood there weeping for what seemed like a long time. I felt dirty. I felt like... I can't describe it. I felt like I had been around something I shouldn't have been around. Later, under hypnosis, Herman recalled an examining table, flashing lights, and creatures resembling human fetuses with overlarge heads and eyes, spongy white skin, and wearing rust-colored jumpsuits. They were about 4.5 feet high. For Herman, there was no question but that his experience was of a satanic delusion. Since then, whenever he sees a UFO, and he has had several more encounters, he renounces it in God's name. This apparently works very effectively. It is important to note that Herman is a fundamentalist Baptist by persuasion. What's that mean by persuasion? Clearly his experiences are in some way related to his beliefs. What is less clear is whether his beliefs caused these experiences, or whether they simply caused him to interpret it in a particular way. As a matter of historical fact, the majority of UFO reports have come from countries with a Christian culture, so it is not surprising that most metaphysical explanations for them have a Christian slant and set the UFO in a Christian context. There is, of course, no rigid Christian dogma in UFO matters, but a concept that has been held by many Christians from the foundation of their religion is that of an Antichrist. Briefly, the Antichrist is a false Messiah, the exact opposite of Jesus, possessing many of his miraculous powers and offering, or seeming to offer, many to the same beliefs, many of the same benefits. In fact, the origins of the idea of such a being antedate Christianity by many centuries. The notion is simply a personification of the dualism of good and evil. It seems to have been one of man's conceptions since he became capable of thinking. I'm sorry, Hillary, but I think you need to read a Bible sometime. Okay. Over the centuries, a tradition has gradually been formulated that the Antichrist is destined to enjoy a temporary success, gaining control of Earth for a short while before a final conflict in which it is confidently predicted he will be worsted by Christ, who will then take over the reins of world government and inaugurate a golden age of everlasting peace. If we mere earthlings know this, then presumably the omniscient Antichrist must know it too. But the prospect of inevitable defeat does not seem to deter him. Certainly the demonic theorists have no doubt of his determination to continue the struggle. And in the turbulence of the present age with its violence, they see indications that the coming of Antichrist is at hand. And the UFOs are the tangible signs that herald that coming. Two American theorists who take this view literally are John Weldon and Zola Levitt. In their book, UFOs, What on Earth is Happening?, published in 1975, they state, UFOs are a manifestation of demon activity. They are here to misguide the multitudes, and they are doing pretty well. They have judiciously utilized their powers through selected people to fascinate the masses, and they have widely promulgated their doctrines. They do not march through Times Square, of course, because this would reveal too much of the spiritual world. This might make people reconsider, as well, the existence of God, and the nether forces would have advertised for their enemy. Just how real are the UFOs, solid objects, or subtle delusions? Are the flying machines really up there? Maybe so. It's not that important. If the demons wish them to be there, they are there. And if they wish people to imagine they're there, then they are imagined to be there. But there is no such ambiguity about the demons who pilot them. Are they just ideas of ours? No, not the way the Bible characterizes them. They have motives, and they take action. We are by no means making them happen or just dreaming up their activities. We believe demons can induce a whole series of experiences that, in fact, never really happened. Similar to the experiences Uri Geller and Dr. Barrick found were induced by their extraterrestrial contacts. They also, however, through various means produce real UFOs, which are visible to anyone. With the powers we know demons have, they could theoretically transform a large chunk of rock into a UFO, assume human form inside of it, and land openly, thus proving the existence of advanced intergalactic civilizations. However, the authors doubt if this is often done. More likely, the standard UFO sighting is either the projection into our atmosphere or the self-transformation of whatever material the demons themselves are composed of. As for their purpose, there is no doubt about that. Quite simply, we think the demons are preparing the coming of the Antichrist. The Antichrist is not your run-of-the-mill world dictator. He is, in fact, something we have never contended with before. A political leader of great acumen, virtually a sorcerer, engaging and appealing, a kind of inverse messiah. In what way do the UFOs herald the Antichrist? They are a form of cultural conditioning to properly set the stage for the Antichrist, who really is a supernatural personality. The world has to be made ready to think in terms of the new and the strange. Here's where we think the UFOs come in. Dan Lloyd is another demonist who does not underestimate the cunning of his enemy. No less than the fundamentalist Christians, Lloyd contemplates with misgivings the UFO-inspired cult followers who look toward benign visitors from outer space. Visitors who will one day land on Earth and take over the reins from a humanity gone sadly astray and unable to solve its global problems. He asks, could it be that Antichrist will manifest in a guise that will fulfill all the expectations of these skywatchers with their distorted religious longings? Lloyd quotes with approval the theory put forward by the eminent French ufologist Jacques Vallée in his control system hypothesis. I believe there is a system around us that transcends time as it transcends space. The system may well be able to locate itself in outer space, but its manifestations are not spacecraft in the ordinary nuts and bolts sense, The UFOs are physical manifestations that cannot be understood apart from their psychic and symbolic reality. What we see in effect here is not an alien invasion. It is a control system which acts on humans and uses humans. What evidence does Valet have for such a system? He points to the continuity of reported happenings, which show that today's UFO reports are only yesterday's folklore in an updated form. One of the cases he cites is the alleged abduction of Barney and Betty Hill. While she was in the craft, Betty was submitted to a simulated medical test. Under hypnosis, she reported that a long needle was inserted into her navel, that she felt pain, and that the pain stopped when the leader made a certain gesture. A 15th century French calendar, the Calendar des Bergens, shows that tortures inflicted by demons on the people they have taken. The demons are depicted piercing their victims' abdomens with long needles. To explain such parallels, Valet claims they must be seen as part of a larger pattern, and that pattern implies a pattern maker. But who that pattern maker may be, who is operating the control system, and for what purpose, Valet cannot or will not say. But many of those who, like Dan Lloyd, believe in supernatural beings of one sort or another, do not share Valet's hesitation. Valet is unable to point a finger at the group in question, but it should not be difficult for anthropologists to be alert to the fact that behind whatever human group may be active in this area, there hovers the invisible presence of the being who acts as their inspirer, the cosmic being who has been known since ancient Persian times as Ahriman. In the Bible, he is known as Satan. It is not from some hypothetical fourth dimension that what we call UFOs are manifesting. It should be truer to say they are deliberately distorted, etheric effects, and it should surprise no one to learn that such effects can influence physical matter and create, in turn, physical effects. Like Weldon and Levitt, Lloyd credits the Ahrimanic beings with the capability to create UFOs to serve their purposes. Another group that welcomes UFOs as grist to its meal is that of the oculists, though perhaps welcome is an inappropriate word. They get offended. For occultists, too, see them as a menace to be taken very seriously. Anthony Roberts and Jeff Gilbertson see UFOs as the latest manifestation of a centuries-old conspiracy of evil forces, gods, demons, spirits, fairies, who seek to manipulate human credulity for their own ends. The reason this activity is today manifesting itself in such a strictly scientific manner is simply that this is a highly technological age, and the phenomenon is merely adjusted accordingly. It knows how to put up a good front, he said. One of those guys said. The authors cite a number of cases in which they suggest the observant reader will notice some darker ambiguities hovering around them. They certainly hovered around the first case they quote, the West Wells sighting of 1977, though not perhaps of the kind that Roberts and Gilbertson had in mind, nor is their final case very convincing. Roberts describes how he was driving along the Kingston bypass outside of London one evening when both his wife and he saw an object variously described as huge and as the size of a very large grapefruit. Does he mean the size of a grapefruit held at arm's length? Good question. That's what I would guess. This so impressed them that they stopped and watched it for 20 minutes as it maneuvered above them. Now, they were there and we were not. Nevertheless, anyone familiar with the traffic conditions on the Kingston bypass must be skeptical of an account that involves a car pulling to the side of that very busy road, and an astonishing aerial display overhead lasting 20 minutes, apparently seen by no one else. It remains the case that UFO experiences are undoubtedly a matter of sober fact, whatever their interpretation. There is certainly a case to be answered, but when so improbable a hypothesis as a cosmic conspiracy is being put forward, the evidence needs to be of the very best. The case of Albert Bender, allegedly visited by 3 men in black, is another instance of the conspiracy that Roberts and Gilbertson claim to have unearthed. But, as Unexplained will show, the Bender case is, to put it kindly, dubious. Nor is the observant reader likely to accept readily the author's version of the Loch Ness Monster mystery, seemingly ready to detect sinister forces in every anomalous phenomenon. They endorse the dramatic adventure of American contactee Ted Owens, who claims he acts as an Earth-based agent for the space intelligences. They sent me on a mission, and Loch Ness was one of the places I was to visit. It was the dark of night, just after midnight, when I stood on the shores of the lake. That's when the monster came up out of the depths and surfaced. It stared at me, and in the moonlight I could see a long neck about 8 inches in diameter and a small head. I communicated with the creature. It is from another dimension and has a link with the space intelligences, he said. In the course of their thesis, Roberts and Gilbertson point the finger at any number of forces who, they imply, are either servants of or unwitting agents for the dark gods. The CIA, the Mafia, the KGB are all playing their part in a conspiracy of which the UFOs are merely the outward sign. When they add, and can we not add, the Men in Black for good measure, the reader may begin to suspect it's all a gigantic spoof. Unfortunately, the authors show not a glimmer of a sense of humor. It seems they are in deadly earnest when they speak of a cosmic battleground, where there is to be fought a battle between forces that are coterminous with all space and coexistent with all time. But this is rather more than most human imaginations are able to cope with, and for most demonists, the cosmic war is a much more here and now affair. Some ufologists believe that the powers behind the UFO phenomenon intend to take over men's minds and turn humankind into a race of robot slaves. Hillary Evans assesses the evidence behind that claim. Thanks, Hillary.
Could I really be sure the people I was then talking with were representatives of the real Space Brotherhood who wished humanity well? This was the dilemma facing Howard Menger, who in 1956 allegedly met a group of space people, who not only introduced him to space music, oh cool, and the space potato, but revealed that he himself was Venetian, as was his second wife. They themselves claim variously that they came from Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, and as though they were not sufficiently confusing, they also informed him that there were bad space persons as well as good. Since the bad ones pretended to be good, how could a mere earthling know whom to trust? The man looked at me sadly. My friend, this earth is a battlefield of Armageddon, and the battle is for men's minds and souls. Prayer, good thoughts, and caution are your best insulation. I shouldn't have doubted these people for a moment, but I was quite ill at ease. I had been sheltered from the knowledge that all of the space people's work on this planet is not sweetness and light. The others I had contacted must have been on the right side, for what I had seen convinced me they were a good people.
Dude's long-winded, he's still talking.
Then the young lady spoke and said, "You don't know, Howard, that there is a very powerful group on this planet which possesses tremendous knowledge of technology, psychology, and, most unfortunate of all, advanced brain therapy. They are using certain key people in the governments of your world. This group is anti-God and might be termed instruments of your mythical Satan. They are using the credulity and simple faith of many people to attain their own ends." For the first time, there was anger and frustration in her voice.
Oh no. The gathering swarms of UFOs are an indication of approaching crisis. Eric Norman, in his Gods, Demons, and UFOs, cites the opinion of an unnamed research physicist at Stanford Research Institute, California. "The mounting evidence leads me to believe that UFOs are extraterrestrial in origin, piloted by intelligent beings. Their appearance in recent years is probably in some way associated with the imminent second coming of Jesus Christ. Many Christians believe in the imminence of such a second coming, but the traditional teachings are clear that Satan isn't going to let Christ walk in and take over the earth without putting up a fight." I don't know, these people. "The belief in the final battle is a key element in every scenario for the last days. However, they differ in other respects. What's more, it is going to be a real war fought by real people with real weapons. Dr. Clifford Wilson of New Zealand has no doubt that the Battle of Armageddon is scheduled for the very near future, and points out that the satanic forces will need all the people who can be pressed into service. Consequently, he suggests men and women are being brainwashed, even possessed, so that when the signal is given, they will be ready to give total allegiance to these beings, who will then show themselves as their masters." Now see, I like this guy. He says, "Even the act of taking over humans is to be taken literally. It seems that when these beings enter the solid state, which is necessary for humans to observe them, they utilize atoms from the world in which they live. They do actually take blood and other physical matter from human beings and animals alike. In this way, they are able to adapt themselves so that we limited human beings will understand them and ultimately be programmed by them." I think that guy's onto something. The French theorist Jean Robin takes a more subtle view. For him, UFOs are only the latest manifestation in a long tradition of strange reports, and what strikes him most forcibly about these reports is that they seem to be imitating or perhaps mocking human ideas. In 1886, he points out, Jules Verne wrote his famous Robert Le Concierant, never heard of that one, which features a massive airborne clipper of the clouds a decade later. In America, there was a wave of UFO sightings in the form of airships, which at that date were purely experimental and to be seen only over France. The subtitle of Robin's book is The Great Parody. Every manifestation of the UFO phenomenon, the American airships of the 1880s, the Scandinavian mystery planes of the 1930s, the Swedish rockets of 1946, the UFOs of today's space age, has been just one step ahead of human achievement.
The heart of the problem,
he insists,
is the projection of a false belief system just beyond existing beliefs.
What is the point of this exercise? For some, it's a sign that the millennium is at hand. The advent of the brave new world brought by a Messiah. But Robin is less optimistic. We are in for a cursed time when there will reign beings who are almost totally dehumanized robots or golems, artificially and temporarily animated by the satanic spirit. And he adds, while it is certainly not our intention to forecast the precise form which the reign of the Antichrist will take, it's not too far-fetched to imagine him descending from a flying saucer. I mean, I think that's what they got all set up. They're going out with the whole alien narrative right now. Somewhat of a disclosure, but it's kind of like a mocking of the actual disclosure or something. I don't know. But I think that's how they're going to play it all out. They're going to say that the rapture was like a bunch of aliens that took everybody or something. You know, it's just my thoughts. Many ufologists whose thinking disagrees in other respects agree that whatever else is going on, humanity is certainly being conned. Too many UFO sightings have a staged quality, as though someone is putting on a show. Too many contact encounters, with their phony medical examinations and absurd messages, simply fail to ring true. John Keel, that guy again. We gotta do a show on John Keel. Asserts that the UFOnauts are the liars, not the contactees, and they are lying deliberately as part of the bewildering smokescreen which they have established to cover their real origin, purpose, and motivation. The UFOnauts? The UFOnauts? See, I said UFOnauts because John Keel would call them UFOs, so I'm guessing he would say UFOnauts. But the UFOnauts' purpose, he feels sure, is sinister and menacing, and for that reason he insists this is not a subject for teenagers and wild-eyed believers. I strongly recommend that parents forbid their children from becoming involved. Oopsie. Brandon is involved. Sorry about that. Others share this feeling. Ivar McKay, one-time chairman of Bufora, Britain's largest UFO organization, claimed that some intelligence or energy is ready to invade our minds, and indeed had already started, as has been only too apparent among some researchers in recent years. He believed that many years' intensive training in the occult was necessary before seeking to tackle the UFO problem. Another Bufora chairman, Roger Stanway, declared in November 1976 that he was now convinced that UFOs were of satanic origin and that he was abandoning ufology. Eric Eaglesby, the author of UFOs and the Christian, declared, "Flying saucers and Nazism are simply aspects of the same thing," and he declared, "UFOs are not just dangerous, they are deadly. It is a sphere in which the Christian is warned to keep out." Welsh UFO investigator Randall Jones, echoed Eaglesby when in a 1979 letter to the Bufora Journal he wrote, "I feel that we must accept, for want of a better description, the potential and probable presence of entities as human beings whose sole purpose is to destroy straightforward belief in Jesus Christ. I would add a note of warning to all those concerned with the investigation of the paranormal, however innocent it may be. If you wish to dwell deeply into what the UFO represents, then you should indeed work with Christ, because the search for ufological knowledge can be extremely dangerous." Less than 18 months later, Puh renounced the subject altogether. In a newspaper interview, he declared that UFOs are dangerous, and their arm is to disorientate, bemuse, and eventually destroy the mind of mankind. My first warning is that I was into something very dangerous. That came from a friend of mine who became involved with UFOs from a scientific point of view after a sighting. After just 14 months, he came to the conclusion that UFOs were involved with the occult and decided to burn his books. He built a bonfire in the garden, but when he threw the books on it, it gave off an incredible heat. The smoke billowed up in the form of a human being, and two hands began to reach out. He was scared out of his wits and later pleaded with me to destroy my documents, but warned me not to burn them. I took his advice, but when it came to my collection of slides, I stupidly threw them in the living room fire. Immediately there was a loud crackling like explosions, and the heat was fantastic. I thought the chimney breast was going to split. It was a terrible experience, and I'm convinced the slides were satanically blessed. Just how dangerous can it be to play with demonic forces was well illustrated by what is said to have happened in 1954 to John Stewart and Barbara Turner of Flying Saucer Investigators of New Zealand. John and Barbara met every night, seemingly with his wife's approval. Wink, wink. To discuss UFO theories and their implications. They took their demonic theory very seriously. There had to be some connection with Satan, but what? As they got deeper into the subject, a change started to come over sweet, kind, innocent Barbara. She, who seemingly took no interest in boys, suddenly interrupted their UFO chat to say, "Gee, I'm glad I'm a girl. I like to be kissed. I like to tease boys," with a partly open shirt, brief shorts, all that. This took a weird turn. Her smile turned more sensual, and she whispered in a very suggestive manner, "I'd like to sit here naked. Like me too?" I don't know what's going on here. Stewart concluded that this was some sort of evil possession. However, the two UFO enthusiasts refused to abandon their studies despite many warnings, including one from a hideous 8-foot creature with a furry body and webbed feet. So it came about that one night, 13 entities came to Barbara's bedroom, marking her all over with scratches that she showed Stewart the following morning. This seems to have convinced her that UFO investigation was too risky, and Stewart himself was menaced by a creature that was male above the waist and female below. One moment, vice versa the next, whereupon he too deserted ufology. History does not record what happened to Barbara, or, for that matter, Stewart's long-suffering wife. Such accounts seem to place the demonic theory of UFOs definitely within the lunatic fringe. But it is as well to remember that similar theories are taken seriously by some leading UFO specialists. For researchers in Britain have contributed more to ufology than Gordon Creighton. Yet he wholeheartedly concurs with William James's observation that the demonic theory will come into its own again one day. "Time is running out fast. All the indications are that before the close of this century, cataclysmic and apocalyptic events will rend this planet. As the waves of senselessness, irrational violence rise higher and higher on the earth, and as the signs of moral and spiritual decay multiply, who can doubt that certain of the UFO entities have a hand in the wrecking and in the stirring of the nauseating brew?" Does UFO evidence really support the demonists? Or are they guilty of interpreting the phenomena to suit their personal beliefs? We shall each of us have our own opinion on that score, but one thing is clear. In the minds of many people, Satan is alive and well and piloting a UFO. I don't know, it just seems like to me that that's the way it's all going to play out. But hey, thanks for listening. We're glad you're here. Thanks as always, Mr. Jimmy Haunted. Thanks Paul, Steve, Matt, UFO Fred, Mountain Holler, everyone else out there. Thanks for listening, guys. And we'll see you again right here next week. God bless you.